Have you ever found yourself sitting in one of those meetings at work? Like, ones I mean.
Oh, absolutely. The classic status update.
Right. Where a shiny new strategy is being presented
Yeah.
and everyone around the big table is just sort of nodding along.
hmm
But privately, maybe by the coffee machine or in a secure group chat, every single person knows the plan is completely doomed.
Yeah, they know it's never going to work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The process is broken, the timeline is a total joke. But in the official boardroom, everybody just smiles, agrees, and commits to the impossible.
It's so common.
It is. And you just sit there wondering, why do otherwise incredibly intelligent groups of people collectively choose to ignore reality?
It's a universal experience, really. And it points to a pretty fascinating contradiction.
Oh, so?
Well, you're describing a situation where the truth is entirely visible to the individuals in the room, right? But it's completely invisible to the organization itself.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
The organization has basically gone blind, even though its employees have their eyes wide open.
So, okay, let's unpack this. Because my first instinct when I see that kind of boardroom denial is to just blame a toxic culture or, point the finger at a terrible boss who just won't listen.
Right, the bad apple theory.
Yeah. But today we are taking a deep dive into a work that completely flips that assumption on its head.
It really does.
The book is called Conscious Leadership by Rodolfo Enriques de Oliveira. And we have a very specific mission today. We are focusing entirely on Chapter 9, which introduces this concept called the organizational shadow.
And what's so fascinating here is that the author argues this phenomenon isn't about toxic individuals at all.
Okay.
We always want to find that bad apple, but this is actually a structural phenomenon.
Meaning it's built into the system itself.
Exactly. It happens when an organization constructs a conscious identity like its persona. And that persona becomes so rigid that it simply refuses to acknowledge essential truths.
Because acknowledging them would break the illusion.
Right. And because the organization actually needs those truths to survive, but categorically refuses to look at them, it forces that vital information into the shadows.
So, before we start diagnosing all the symptoms in our own workplaces, we need to understand the anatomy of this thing. The book calls the organizational shadow a Jungian Ashbean complex.
Yes, quite a mouthful.
Yeah, a bit of jargon there. So I want to break that down, starting with the Jungian part. I know Carl Jung was a psychologist who talked a lot about the human ego.
Right.
How does that map onto a corporate entity?
Think about how an individual builds a persona, We all construct a socially acceptable version of ourselves to present to the world.
Sure, like how you act on a first date versus at home.
Exactly. But any part of ourselves that doesn't fit that persona, like our fears, aggressive instincts, or insecurities, it doesn't just vanish because we refuse to look at it.
It has to go somewhere.
Right. It gets repressed into what Jung called the shadow. And organizations do the exact same thing on a collective level.
Oh, wow.
They create a corporate persona. They want to be seen as hyper-rational, perfectly harmonious, endlessly innovative, or, entirely aligned.
And so any internal signal that threatens that pristine moral narrative gets pushed completely out of sight.
Exactly.
It's like sweeping dirt under the rug because admitting the house is messy conflicts with your identity as like the perfect host.
That is the exact mechanism, yeah. But with far higher stakes, the organization basically decides we don't talk about that flaw or that failing product because that's not who we are.
Wow. Okay, so that's the Jungian side.
Right. Now, to understand the true cost of that repression, we have to look at the second half of that term, the Ashbean part.
Right, Ashbean.
This comes from W. Ross Ashby. He was a pioneer in the field of cybernetics. And Ashby formulated something called the law of requisite variety.
Okay, that sounds like serious systems engineering jargon. How does requisite variety actually work in a business context?
Let's look at an organization as a living organism trying to survive in a complex environment like a jungle.
Okay, I'm with you.
The law of requisite variety states that for a system to survive, its internal regulatory capacity, its variety, must match the complexity of the environment it lives in.
So it has to be as complex inside as the world is outside.
Exactly. If the jungle has 100 unique fatal threats, the organism's nervous system must be capable of perceiving and reacting to at least those 100 threats.
Makes sense.
If its internal variety is too low and it can only perceive 10 of those threats, well, it will inevitably be destroyed by the 90 it couldn't see.
Oh, man. So when an organization represses uncomfortable truths to protect its ego, its persona, it is literally throwing away vital sensory information. It's
Yes.
just blinding itself to the threats in the jungle.
It reduces its own internal variety. By systematically filtering out the reality of the situation, the organization makes itself, in the author's words, cybernetically stupid.
Cybernetically stupid. That's a great phrase.
It's brilliant. It completely loses the capacity to adapt.
It's like, okay, it's like putting thick duct tape over a smoke detector because the loud flashing alarm is ruining the peaceful Zen vibe of your living room.
Yes. Perfect analogy.
You preserve the feeling of safety and you keep the room perfectly quiet, but you have completely lost the ability to detect an actual fire.
Exactly that. You are trading actual survival capacity for short-term ideological comfort.
Wow.
The environment outside the organization is still complex, still dangerous, still changing rapidly, but the organization has crippled its own nervous system just to avoid feeling uncomfortable.
So this isn't about ignoring trivial office gossip. This is about a system actively suppressing the essential internal intelligence it literally needs to survive.
Absolutely.
So if the shadow is hidden by definition, if it's the stuff we've taped over, how do you, the listener, actually spot it in your own workplace? There have to be symptoms, right?
Yeah, the book provides a very clear diagnostic lens for this. The first major sign that an organizational shadow has formed is a disproportionate emotional charge.
A disproportionate emotional charge. What does that look like?
Well, imagine you're in a project review, and someone raises a relatively minor point of dissent.
Like pointing out a logistical flaw in a new software rollout.
Right. Now, instead of a calm, analytical discussion about the code, the reaction from leadership is massive anxiety, deep defensiveness, or immediate moralization.
Oh, I've seen that. People get visibly angry or shut the conversation down instantly.
Exactly. They might even accuse the person asking the question of not believing in the vision.
Right. You're not a team player.
Exactly. That disproportionate, highly charged reaction is a massive red flag. It tells you the person didn't just point out a logistical error.
They accidentally bumped into the organization's repressed shadow.
Yes. They touched a nerve the system is desperately trying to protect.
Which leads right into another symptom, one I think we've all experienced. Knowledge without legitimate expression.
Oh, yes.
This goes back to the scenario we started with. It's when everyone knows the truth in the hallway or in the encrypted chats, but absolutely no one can say it in the boardroom where the decisions are actually made.
Right. The intelligence exists within the human components of the system, but it has no legitimate pathway to influence action.
It's just trapped.
Exactly. And when companies sense this dysfunction, they often try to fix it, which leads to the third symptom, adaptive persistence.
Adaptive persistence, meaning it just keeps surviving.
Yes. You will see endless structural reorganizations, brand new value statements painted in giant letters on the lobby wall, and, expensive external consultants brought in to shift the culture.
Oh, the classic consultant fix.
Right. But the core dysfunction effortlessly survives all of it. The shadow just adapts to the new structure because the underlying refusal to face reality hasn't changed.
Wait, I have to push back on how long this can actually last.
Okay.
Because reality always wins, right? If the system is literally ignoring reality to protect its ego, failure has to happen eventually.
It does.
Let's say a major tech company rushes out a new piece of hardware. The engineers know the battery catches fire, but the shadow suppresses that info to maintain the persona of rapid innovation. When the product launches and actually starts catching fire in people's hands, the illusion shatters. Who takes the fall when the system itself was blind?
Yeah, and this raises an important question. The author has a fascinating term for the aftermath of those inevitable disasters. He calls it blame as organizational shadow discharge.
Discharge, so like venting pressure.
Exactly. When a massive failure occurs, the system still cannot name its own structural flaws because doing so would destroy its precious persona.
Right. They can't admit it was the system.
So it has to localize that systemic failure onto an individual.
Putting a scapegoat to absorb the sin.
It is deeper than just passing the book, though. The system literally creates a misfit.
A misfit.
Yeah, it takes a massive, complex systemic breakdown, like a rushed product timeline that ignored safety checks, and pins the entire catastrophe on one person's supposed incompetence or bad attitude.
So they fire the misfit.
Right. By expelling the misfit, firing them dramatically, demoting them, exiling them, the organization discharges the built-up tension.
And they get to say, well, the system is perfectly fine, our culture is great, we just had a bad apple in engineering.
Exactly. And by doing so, the organization completely avoids systemic learning. It protects its comfortable illusions and goes right back to business as usual.
Having learned absolutely nothing from the fire.
Nothing at all.
Wow. They expel the person who actually interacted with the truth so the system can keep its eyes closed.
That's the tragic reality of it.
Okay, so now that we understand how the shadow operates and how it protects itself through blame, we need to look at the specific, recurring patterns the book outlines.
Yes, the shadow patterns.
Right, these are the ways knowledge and authority get totally distorted day to day. Let's start with the first one.
The first major one is called the Bateson pattern. This is essentially an epistemological error.
Meaning an error in how they know what they know.
Exactly. The organization becomes so obsessed with its own specific way of measuring reality that it actively filters out any corrective difference.
So like a company that is absolutely obsessed with growth metrics. The dashboards are all green, they're hitting their quarterly revenue targets, and the leadership team is high-fiving. But meanwhile, employee burnout is skyrocketing, and product quality is falling off a cliff.
Right. And because burnout and product quality aren't easily captured in the dominant financial data the company reveres, they are treated as irrelevant noise.
They literally don't compute.
Exactly. They are filtered out of the decision-making process entirely. And the terrifying thing about the Bateson pattern is that alignment looks incredibly strong.
Because everyone is looking at the same green dashboard.
Yes. Everyone is marching in the exact same direction, hitting the same metrics, feeling incredibly confident right up until the moment the company suddenly collapses.
They crash into a reality they structurally refuse to measure.
Exactly.
That structural refusal is deeply tied to another pattern the author mentions, which is honestly one of the most frustrating things to experience: paternalistic epistemology.
Oh, this one is huge.
This is when the frontline workers, the people actually talking to the customers, working the machines, seeing the bugs in the software, they know exactly what is broken.
Yes.
But leadership treats them like children who don't understand the big picture.
Right. The system experiences a regression in how it values knowledge. Under pressure, legitimate knowing is re-centralized to the top.
So the executives hoard the intelligence.
The organization implicitly decides that true intelligence only exists in the C-suite. So all that vital, lived experience from the front line is treated as anecdotal complaining.
Just noise from the factory floor.
Right. It is ignored until an expensive external consultant comes in, interviews those exact same frontline workers, and translates their knowledge into an official PowerPoint framework.
And only then does the knowledge become legitimate enough for the executives to act on.
Exactly.
But here's where it gets really interesting to me. Because if you're listening to this, you might think the obvious solution to all this top-down blindness is to just flatten the organization.
Right. Get rid of the hierarchy.
Yeah. Get rid of the managers, democratize power. We see modern startups doing this all the time, claiming to be post-hierarchical.
Yes, but the book warns that if you just remove the formal structure without doing the deep developmental work, you create something much worse.
What does that look like?
The author calls this the gravity well of power. Many organizations claim to be totally flat, operating with no bosses, but complex coordination still requires decisions to be made.
Right. Someone has to steer the ship.
Exactly. When explicit formal authority is treated as evil or illegitimate by the company culture, that authority doesn't actually disappear. It just goes underground.
It's like removing all the traffic lights at a busy intersection to make the road freer.
I like that.
You don't actually get freedom.
Yeah.
You just get the biggest, most aggressive trucks dominating the intersection, and everyone else has to guess the unspoken rules of who gets to drive.
That is the perfect way to visualize it. Power concentrates in a gravity well based on informal networks, legacy influence, who has the loudest voice, or simply who is closest to the founders.
It's all high school politics, basically.
Pretty much. The author draws on Joe Freeman's famous essay, The Tyranny of Structurelessness, to point out a crucial danger here. You can hold a formal manager accountable. You can critique a designated leader.
But you can't hold a shadow structure accountable.
Exactly. When power is informal, it is completely invisible, which makes it incredibly prone to abuse, bias, and favoritism.
It's almost worse than a bad boss. Because with a bad boss, You at least know who is in charge and who to complain to.
Right.
Okay, so authority can get shadowed and go underground, but it's not just authority. The book points out that sometimes the very things we universally consider good culture become weapons of the shadow.
Yeah, and this brings us to the lumen pattern, which is deeply connected to that gravity well we just discussed.
Okay,
In the lumen pattern, an organization completely denies that exclusions or hard trade-offs are even being made. The culture demeans that everyone be included in every discussion and every action must be a consensus.
sounds exhausting.
It is. So when a painful decision has to be made, like killing a beloved but failing project, nobody officially makes the call. The decision just sort of happens due to the budget quietly running out or the clock expiring.
So no one actually pulled the trigger.
Right. And because no individual actually made a choice, no one has to own the consequences.
Wait, I really want to push back on this. Because companies right now are spending millions of dollars trying to achieve psychological safety and deep inclusion.
True.
It's like the holy grail of modern teaming. Are you saying that psychological safety is actually a shadow pattern that prevents decision-making?
Not psychological safety itself, no, but a distorted, shadowed version of it. The author calls this specific distortion the Argyris pattern.
Okay, what's the difference?
Well, true psychological safety means you are safe to take risks, point out deep flaws, and challenge the status quo without fear of retaliation.
Right.
But in the Argyris pattern, psychological safety is completely decoupled from accountability.
What does that look like when a team is actually sitting around a table trying to solve a problem?
To understand it, we have to look at Chris Argyris' concept of single loop versus double loop learning.
Okay, lay on me.
Let's say a software launch fails. Single loop learning is fixing the immediate bug. It's asking how do we tweak the code so it works next time.
That makes sense.
But double loop learning goes deeper. It asks, why did our testing process allow this bug through? Are our entire engineering assumptions fundamentally flawed?
Oh, asking the hard questions.
Right. Now, in the Argyris pattern, teams will discuss their surface-level errors very politely. That's the single loop. But they will absolutely refuse to engage in double loop learning.
Because it's uncomfortable.
Yes, they won't question the underlying logic or the competence of the leadership that caused the error, because doing so might hurt someone's feelings or threaten the harmony of the group.
Ah, see, you get incredible politeness. Nobody ever raises their voice, but you get zero real transformation.
Exactly.
The actual reasoning that led to the failure is protected from scrutiny to preserve the peace, which connects directly to a concept the book calls socialized silence.
Yes, socialized silence is a profound constraint.
Because if you are the one person in that polite room who tries to initiate double loop learning, you get punished.
Exactly. It isn't about people being naturally timid or shy. It happens when highly capable people have excellent, accurate judgment about a risk. But they learn through experience that voicing that risk in the collective space carries a severe social penalty.
Right. Think about it from the listener's perspective. You're looking at a project timeline, and you mathematically know it is going to fail.
You've done the math.
Yeah, but you stay quiet, because if you speak up, you aren't rewarded for your foresight. You are penalized for not being a team player. You're labeled as a negative influence who is disrupting the psychological safety of the group.
And this is where the shadow becomes truly dangerous. In this pattern, silence actually becomes a marker of professional competence.
Wow.
You are rewarded and promoted for knowing exactly when to keep your mouth shut and let the doomed project proceed.
That is so dark.
It is. The organization continues to function smoothly on the surface, but it has completely severed its contact with reality.
And when human judgment is systematically silenced like that, what steps in to fill the void?
Mm.
Process.
Yes.
The book calls this procedural displacement. When people are no longer allowed to use their brains, they hide behind bureaucracy.
Process is originally meant to aid human coordination, but eventually, in a shadowed organization, complying with the process becomes more important than adapting to reality.
The checklist becomes the goal.
The rules become an identity-protecting structure. People will literally watch a strategy drive the company off a cliff, but as long as they filled out the compliance forms correctly and followed the exact methodology, they feel entirely blameless.
Process completely displaces human judgment.
Exactly.
It's the ultimate bureaucratic defense mechanism. Like, don't look at me, the ship might be sinking, but I followed the protocol.
Right. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, all of these patterns, the Bates and measurement trap, the gravity well of hidden power, the polite stagnation of the Argyris pattern, and procedural displacement, They explain a terrifying paradox.
Who cares?
They explain how highly capable companies full of brilliant people can slowly, inevitably lose their ability to learn, to make decisions, and to coordinate.
Because the system won't let them.
Right. They don't fail because they lack intelligence. They fail because their identity structures make it functionally illegal to use that intelligence.
That is such a heavy realization. But I think it's also incredibly validating.
How so?
Well, let's bring this back to you, the listener. The strain you feel at work, the endless performative meetings, the unspoken rules you have to navigate, the decisions that make absolutely zero logical sense. It isn't necessarily your fault.
It really isn't.
And it isn't just because you have a bad boss. What you are feeling is the structural weight of the organizational shadow. It is the crushing pressure of a system expending massive amounts of energy to maintain an illusion.
And the reason this matters now more than ever is the context of our era. The author points out that we are living in the network age.
Meaning everything is connected and fast.
Very fast. In the industrial era, consequences moved relatively slowly. If a company made a bad, shadowed decision, it might take a decade for the market effects to fully materialize.
You had a buffer.
Exactly. But today, consequences propagate globally at light speed. A single repressed truth can ripple through supply chains, financial markets, and public perception instantly.
So I guess the question is, what does this all mean for the future of how we work?
It means that organizations can no longer afford to be cybernetically stupid. The buffer of time that used to protect slow, shadowed companies is entirely gone.
The jungle is just too fast now.
It is. Integrating the shadow, having the courage to face uncomfortable truths, and allowing frontline human judgment to actually shape strategy, these aren't just nice HR initiatives anymore.
They're survival skills.
They're absolute conditions for civilizational endurance. If we keep building complex systems that actively punish the truth, the sheer speed of the modern world will tear those systems apart.
Going back to our earlier analogy, in the past, if you taped over the smoke detector, the house might smolder for years before a fire broke out. But in the network age, the house is made of dry kindling. You cannot afford to tape over the detector just because you don't like the noise. It is time to face the fire.
Beautifully said.
Which leaves me with a final provocative thought for you to take with you today. Think about your own team, your own department, or your entire organization. If your company were to completely dissolve its shadow tomorrow, if everyone woke up and faced reality with total, unflinching honesty, what comfortable, protective illusion would you personally have to give up?
Now that is the real, uncomfortable work of conscious leadership.
Thanks for joining our deep dive into the organizational shadow today. Keep questioning the system, and we will catch you next time.